Hello, and welcome to this episode, very special episode of Movie Howl. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Joe to discuss movies, both old, new, popular, underground, classics, cult favorites, good and bad. And this time we're talking about Gemini Man.
Yes, we are. Just watched it. This is a slightly newer, not super old Will Smith movie.
Yep, double billing. Does he get top and bottom billing for this?
I'm not really sure exactly.
Which one's more prestigious? Which one's young Will and old Will?
This was a movie.
Indeed.
Okay, so there were definite things that I liked about this movie, and other things that it was kind of panned. Not great reviews.
Oh.
And I was always curious as to why. A lot of charisma with Will Smith. He's done a lot of things people like. He's a great actor. And it's not like I disliked his performance in this.
He cries on command like no one else. I mean, he's real good at it. He's very, very good at conveying emotion.
He is. This ended up being just I hesitate to say the word competent action movie.
Yeah, it's a hard movie to review so quickly after watching it. I mean, we just came out of the other room from seeing it for the first time, both of us. What I had heard about it from one of our mutual friends who'd seen it and from some of the reviews online were that it was a movie about old versus new. And that was supposed to be the theme of it, the old way versus the new way, the aging assassin losing a step and deciding it's time to step down, in a Bond type way, save what's left of his soul, that sort of thing.
Yeah, in the beginning of this, I was actually became kind of invested. I enjoyed how it started. There was a very impressive, at least unique camera shot with the train.
Yeah, there was a very cool wide angle shot. They used some kind of fisheye lens, so it appeared to be coming at you and then away from you. It was
like this train on a straight track made a right angle in the shot. It was really neat. That was cool.
And the first time you see Clay Varys, the shot where it comes around him was very cool too.
Yeah, so this had some people you're going to recognize. Clay Varys, played by Clive Owen. Another character, Danny, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I hadn't seen in a lot. She was the female lead in Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah, which is not a movie I had seen, so...
We might need to... It's interesting. It's a unique movie, if nothing else can be said about it. Almost unlike this movie. Not the most unique thing I've ever seen. Not like a story that hasn't been told in some other way, possibly better before. I really felt at one point during this movie... I stopped and I said to you, "Are we watching Universal Soldier? Is that what's going on right now?" It just, I really felt in the beginning of this that it had potential.
It feels like a Bourne knockoff. I mean, Bourne in the movies, the books are 100% different. I don't know if you've ever read them.
I have not.
They're super, super different. But in the movies, they are trying to kill him to tie up loose ends, even though all he wants is to just go off on his own and run his scooter rental place with his girlfriend, right?
Yeah, I remember that from the movie.
Yeah. In this, it's kind of the same thing. He's just trying to retire. Somebody else calls him and says, "Hey, there's something a little off about that last contract." And he goes, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I should talk to the guy who told you that." That's it. That's all it takes for his handlers or superiors or whatever to decide that it's time for him to go.
It is, but they use that as the excuse to start this off. But based on things you learn throughout the movie, it realistically had nothing to do with that. It had to do with Clay Varys, which, again, the whole Game of Thrones reference, we thought about it the whole time they kept using this name Varys. So if you all think of that too, we apologize, but that's, it is what it is. because of what's going on, the young version of Will Smith going after the old version, that's the reason he wanted to push for this so hard. That he felt the need to, he had to make this young version of him take out the old version, and that's going to be your, final induction into the life that I have set up for you.
Right. If being an assassin was a PhD, this is your dissertation.
Exactly. This only came out in 2019. Not an old movie. Man, some of the special effects they did in this.
Yeah, that was what I was going to get into. Yeah. Oh man is right.
See, now our podcast, this thing that we are doing together as a united decision, we don't want to just make these and just roast the shit out of movies. That's not really our goal.
But this one,
oh man,
is a little difficult. It's not a bad movie, I wouldn't say. But it has these moments where it just seems wrong.
Yeah.
Like the scene where, the one that really bothered me was the scene where they're on the motorcycles or the dirt bikes, whatever they are.
Yeah.
I
wrote that down. The motorcycle fight was very hokey. At least towards the end of it was.
Yeah. For the rest of it, it seemed like a Bourne movie.
Yeah. Chase scene.
Or a Bond movie. It seemed like any kind of typical international spy, assassin, thriller type
thing. They're in
thing.
Colombia, so unique locale, I guess, that kind of thing, driving through the streets.
Yeah, and actually part of it even seemed realistic when old Will Smith, what's his name? Henry.
Henry.
So we need to refer to them as Henry and Junior. When Henry goes to take that dirt bike from the guy on the street, just some random dude, the person in the car next to him grabs him.
Yep.
That seems real. That seems like something you would do. Like somebody comes up and takes a bike from somebody you're like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it stops him from getting the shot at Junior. The part that bothers me, which you're talking about, is when Henry gets knocked off his bike by Junior.
Yes.
And he rolls, and it goes very clearly into CG. And then, because before that, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
It looked really real. It looked like one of the Mission Impossible movies where they use a lot of practical effects. And then Junior starts coming at him with that dirt bike, particularly where he rides up, brakes with the front brake, goes onto the front wheel, and then swings it around to hit Henry with the back wheel.
Yeah, clocks him.
That looked really, really fake.
Yeah, it was
because it was definitely CG. And then he does this thing where he's looping around, and just the way that he's moving, the way the bike's moving, it looks really, really out of place. It sticks out a lot. It's not great because the physics aren't great. Like, it's just moving too fast. There's clearly no centrifugal force to it. It took me out of it. Otherwise, it was a really good scene.
There are several moments in the movie, I'd say, that are exactly like that you just mentioned. That there's some sort of interaction, the fight scene between Henry and Junior down in the catacombs.
That one looked real fake, too. There were a couple scenes where it looked real. As real as it can, giving the Junior is also a CG person. I don't know if he's entirely CG. It looks like it's just they've done the de-aging thing on the face, but yeah, there's the scene where they're walking around, they're interacting. You can forget, especially in low light, that Junior's not entirely real.
Right.
But then, yeah, for some reason they get into this fist fight, and it reminded me a lot of the CG from World War Z. There's just some way that they're being lit, the way their clothes are moving while they're swinging around.
And like you talked about with the motorcycle, when I watched these two and they're fighting, all of a sudden they weren't fighting like you watch two people fighting each other. It was, the movements were really faster than they should have been.
Yeah.
And it immediately took me out of it. I'm like, wow, there's no realism to this whatsoever, which was super disappointing considering we'd seen a fight scene earlier with the female character in this movie, and
that looked really good. It looked really real. They go, yeah. The plot of the movie is that they are going to kill Henry, so they start sending people after him. And that first scene where they come to his house and he goes into his panic room down below is straight out of Red. At the beginning when they try to kill Bruce Willis, almost exactly the same scene. They're taking it more seriously here. but it's almost the same scene, and it's well done.
It is.
And then there's the scene where he calls some people that he knows, a guy that was with him earlier, his spotter, and then Danny, the one that was surveilling him at the marina. He calls her, "Did you know about this?" "Okay, you don't." "Then they're after you next." Then she gets into a fight with this guy who thinks she's working with Henry now, correctly. But he's like, "Where is she?" And then they get into this fight, and we were talking about it during the movie. This was a really well shot scene. It looks real. You know, she's smaller than the guy that she's going up against, so she uses the environment to her advantage, gets the upper hand, and wins.
And it wasn't one of those moments that they have in so many. We mentioned it, that they have in so many of these Hollywood movies right now, where they're trying to turn this, 90-pound girl to beat up these 250-pound men, and you're watching it, and it doesn't look real at all. It looks so unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, even in a movie like Snatch, where you have Brad Pitt, take out that huge dude, that doesn't look real. It's funny. It's supposed to be funny, but it doesn't look real.
True, but
at least they're going to make it serious.
At least with the background that is explained in that particular movie in Snatch. Afterwards, you're like, oh, okay, at least that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, in this one, she's skilled. It's not, that's... And the point here is that's a really well done fight scene. It looks real. It looks like it's all done practically. But for some reason, there has to be some limitation with the de-aging that they're using, or the way they're imposing a face, that it has to be done in CG, where you can see both of their faces periodically. But it just looks so weird, and it looks like special effects from several years ago. I mean, I know the movie's 2 years old, but the effects look older than that.
It does. It does
and they just look really out of place.
Yeah, there's certain things in here that harkened back to movies that are much older than this. And I was like, oh, well, that's what that reminds me of, some of the movements and things that I saw. But I will say, she was one of my favorite parts of this entire movie.
She was great.
She acted really well. I loved her character. I actually really enjoyed the dynamic between her and Henry.
Kind of a mentor type relationship, a little bit. I mean, it was half partnership, half mentoring, where he's kind of, I don't know, he sort of guides her through some things. He tries to protect her a little bit, but not too much. And she does do well. She gets him out of jail when he's taken by the police in Colombia after the big. And
they explain some of this in the beginning when he's talking to her about, things that she's done coming up to the point where he meets her, and they explain it story-wise that she is a skilled operator.
That she has a very decorated background.
Right, has done some good work. And I really also appreciated that they didn't try to shoehorn in some sort of love story.
Yeah. I was actually thinking that was coming, not with Henry, but maybe with Junior.
Yeah, later on I thought, oh, are they going to throw this in? And they just didn't. And thank you, Gemini Man. There's going to be some things I really did like in this movie, if not all of them.
So I do remember that when this movie first came out, I saw reviews and opinions that talked about one of the main messages behind the movie is this thing about tradition versus modern values or modern technology, and kind of that the old ways still have a place in the modern world. That being said, I didn't get any of that from this.
Exactly. I don't think that was portrayed almost at all.
Yeah, they're using very similar weapons. Junior has more advanced ones because he's working for a private, basically a private army. He's better equipped than the retired guy who worked for the government.
Yeah, his employer is called Gemini, like a private mercenary kind of group. It's its own little, army kind of a thing.
Yeah. So, and even when it comes to the confrontation between the two of them, they go toe to toe. I mean, Junior gets the upper hand, but Henry also has the upper hand at a few different points. He clearly has the opportunity to kill Junior if he wants to.
Yep.
He just doesn't. There are also points where Junior has the upper hand and can kill Henry anytime he wants, but he doesn't. So, I don't know. I don't know if they were going for that. they didn't do a very good job of it. And they definitely chose the wrong guy. They chose an actor who is famous for not aging. And I was thinking about it. I've heard it mentioned, but I was thinking about it at the end of the movie where Junior and Henry are talking. And Junior says, man, I just can't believe in 30 years I'm going to look like you. And it's like, what? Exactly the same, but with a little bit of like gray stubble?
Right. Like any of us, if we looked like Will Smith looks at 51 years of age, I think all of us would be like, okay, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. All right, I'm happy with this. You look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, I can smile at myself in the mirror every day. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Neither of us are as old as Will Smith. And I'm actually not that far away from how old Junior's supposed to be in this. And both of us, I think, look older.
Oh my God,
than Will Smith. It's real bad. I think Will Smith was older in this movie than the guy that played Uncle Phil was when Fresh Prince started.
I mean, I 100% believe you're right. Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
And if the stuff that he goes through in this, especially during that motorcycle chase scene, the getting knocked off the bike, he rolls along the ground for like 20 feet or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, that's me in a body cast.
Yep. He has road rash after it, but he doesn't have any real sign that in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
He has no real physical limitation or consequence from what's happening to him. I mean, it's like a little kid. If your son went outside and climbed a tree right now and fell out of it from like 12 feet up, he'd probably jump up and do it again. If I sleep the wrong way at night, I'm done for the next day.
Wake up the next day. Oh God, my neck. Oh,
yeah.
Lord.
I'm sitting on the couch.
Is it? My day's over. Yep. Nope. No raking leaves. I'm not doing it. No, this was, and I mean, a little suspension of disbelief. Adrenaline goes a long way. That kind of thing. But the good with the bad, there's, as we said, some good stuff in this movie, some not so good stuff in this movie. Some of the other things I liked were, I think it's Benedict Wong. Is the actor's name?
The guy who plays Wong?
The guy who plays Wong in Doctor Strange, yeah.
He was very good.
He was a great partner to Henry's character.
Yeah.
And that was a neat dynamic. He threw in a little bit of levity sometimes, which was really good.
We're all BFFs now. I liked that there was a little bit of humor here and there, but it wasn't. They didn't hit you over the head with it.
No, this was just a couple little times. Otherwise, for the most part, they tried to build fairly suspenseful things that were going on. They wanted you to care about these characters. They wanted you could tell, to care what was going on. But my real problem with this is going to be how the action scenes played out. That's what really turned this into not the best that it could have been.
The end scene, oh my goodness, where this mystery soldier shows up and looks at Varys on this roof, and Varys just gives him this like go signal,
right?
And he jumps off this roof, like this 3-story roof, like jumps off, catches this ledge, jumps back down, runs,
parkour.
All of it looks, I want to say it looks like Assassin's Creed, but Assassin's Creed never looked as bad as that.
No, I'm telling you, and I know you said, when I said it to you before, you hadn't seen this movie. For all those of you who have seen Blade 2, it looked like that. When the ninjas come to attack Blade in the very beginning of the movie, they don't really want to attack him. It's the Vampire Guild. They're trying to come and get him, and they're wearing these suits, and some of the movements and the CG that they put into that looked exactly like this. And I'm sorry, Blade 2 was not made in 2019. It was not made in 2009.
It looks like, to me, I just realized what it kind of looks like. It looks like that fight scene from, I think, the beginning of Matrix Reloaded, where there are all the Smiths going after Neo, and it goes into this super cartoony...
Wasn't it in the beginning of that, but yeah, the 100 Agent Smith fight scene?
Yeah. Wasn't it? Whatever. Whenever it was.
Yes.
It's kind of along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got this character who's very much like Black Noir from The Boys.
Yeah.
That's really what he reminded me of because, I mean, this is before The Boys, I'm fairly certain. Not the comic, but the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what he looks like. He's totally decked out in this outfit. It just looks like leather or rubber, basic armor, not anything super strong. But he comes into the building, they're shooting him, they're blowing stuff up around him, like nothing's really hurting him. It kind of will stagger him, knock him back a little bit, but none of it's hurting him.
Yeah, like at one point they're fighting this character and they use their guns to shoot his arms and legs to block his punches.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what single layer body armor are you wearing that stops 5.56 ammunition from blowing a hole in your arm, your hand, your foot,
or breaking all your bones?
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you get hit, like you're wearing a bulletproof vest. Somebody my dad worked with years ago, who was a police officer before he worked in the warehouse that my dad worked in, talked about that, having to wear a vest and getting shot because you need to know when they did that training. He said, imagine, without wearing anything, somebody took a ball-peen hammer and hit you in the chest as hard as they could. That's what it feels like getting shot with a bulletproof vest on.
That's what I've heard too. Although they said, like, imagine a baseball bat or something. But
oh my God.
Yeah, they said it's really bad. Even if you manage to take it all in the vest and you have a big, like a thick one on, like
Sure.
like a police officer might wear, it's still going to hurt.
Right.
And it's still going to potentially break ribs.
They've done a good job showing that in other movies where somebody gets shot like that and then they take off this vest and they have really big, bruisey contusions that look like, oh, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah, and in a lot of them, they'll have an impact from that for the rest of the interaction or the rest of the time where you would expect that to happen. They have a big bruise, lasts a couple days. Broken rib, a little longer.
Yeah.
But any shot would just stagger him.
He
got explosion. He just came up, and it looked like something out of the Terminator movies where he's still just walking towards him.
Yeah.
And you find out at the end.
It's not the T-1000. It could have been. We thought maybe for a second. Is he going to morph into a liquid metal? No, it's not. It's just a man.
Yep. Yeah, and it's, spoilers, you've been warned, it's another junior. But it's a junior that has been stripped of emotion, that doesn't have the ability to feel pain, that's supposed to be the perfect soldier. But Junior didn't even know about it.
No, it was hidden from him. And Junior, I mean, there's the moment at the very end where they're talking to Varys and he just walks up and he starts talking to them,
He makes his case.
He does.
It's kind of convincing. The only reason we really know he's a bad guy is because he's the one pushing to kill Henry. He's really pushing for it at the beginning. He is the one that cloned him without his knowledge. He also, we find out, to basically push any fear out of him, drowned him. Purposely allowed him to drown and then resuscitated him or revived him. And other than that, he actually does make a pretty compelling case for why what he's doing is not that bad. He's saying these are clones. They literally cannot feel pain. They cannot feel fear. They don't have families. The people who are going to take the place of this one that you killed have parents. They have families. They have lives. They're going to be missed if something happens to them. They have fear.
Yeah, those unwanted traits have been bred out of these clones that they've made. It took a concept that I thought could have been very interesting.
It wasted it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think it lived up to the potential that at least I thought it had in the at least beginning 30 minutes of this movie.
It started off to be a very competent and fun action movie because I was cool with it not having really too much to it in terms of its message or moral. Kind of like Night and Day with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz.
Yeah.
That's a fun movie.
Mm-hmm.
There is kind of a message to it, I guess, if you look for it. But I mean, really, it's just fun.
Yeah.
Just a fun movie. And it has, for the most part, more believable fights, more believable effects. And it's, I'm pretty sure, a significantly older movie.
Yeah, it is. And that was one of probably the most disappointing thing about this movie. The fight scenes that you expected to, be what was really going to drive this were not that. They just weren't good.
Yeah. And I think it must be, I feel like I'm defending it a little bit, but it must be a limitation of the technology they were using to de-age Will Smith. That's all I can think of. There must be something with the way they were doing it, since it's him fighting himself, not just a young version of him fighting somebody else.
I mean, there's that. There was the scene towards the end with the big battle scene with them where, well, even the fight between Varys and Junior up on the roof, that wasn't terrible.
No, it was pretty good.
Most
it was
of
a little
that was
bit
believable.
Yeah. If you believe that Varys is capable of keeping up with Junior. Junior is trained to be the perfect soldier, and Varys just takes him down pretty quickly. I mean, he has the element of surprise, but he is able to keep up with him in a way you wouldn't expect him to necessarily.
True, at least in the beginning, until
Junior got the upper hand.
Junior finally decides that I'm, this person who has been his dad.
Yeah, it is kind of like he decides, like, all right, no, I'm not.
Right.
I'm not allowing this to happen.
It's time for me to, really take the upper hand here. But during that scene with, and again, with Henry and Danny, they worked well together. But the thing that bothered me is when, and he makes mention of body armor, weak at the joints, things like that. But they're taking out these guys who are fully armored guys.
One shot.
Yeah. Which I kind of believed from him based on, in the very beginning of the movie, he's proven to be somebody who could do things like that.
Right. The whole thing is based around the fact that he's exceptional.
Yeah. And exceptional at shooting people.
Yeah.
Not just like hand-to-hand, like shooting people. That's his bread and butter right there.
Mm-hmm. Making a 2-kilometer shot on a moving train going 238 kilometers an hour or whatever they said it was.
Something ridiculous like that is nigh on impossible, but impressive. I was like, oh, that was impressive. Okay. But her doing it, them just taking these guys out, one shot, pop, things like, and it's fun. Very John Wick-ish.
There was a moment that really reminded me of that where she gets hit in the leg and he's dragging her by like the collar of her jacket and she's still shooting as she's going. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool.
It was good. And that again, realistic. Like, you're being dragged back, you got shot, but people aren't going to stop shooting at you.
You're a badass.
Just because you got shot once, so you have to, keep shooting and doing your thing. So their dynamic was very good. I enjoyed that. The CG in this movie is just not good.
It's just used in such strange ways because it flips. Sometimes they're using it, sometimes they're not. Sometimes the Black Noir character, the extra Junior that they had laying around that they send after him, he is a real person in one scene and then CG the next. They could have used a fireproof suit after the explosion to walk out of it, but it's very clearly CG. I guess because they could get the effects they wanted that way, the certain kind of lighting to make it very intimidating. And it was, if you can get past the obvious CG. In a movie that was entirely CG, it would be effective.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, all right. That's maybe, that's fair. Fair point.
So the last thing I want to talk about is Varys raising Junior. His whole goal in this thing is to, the whole thing that was set into motion was set that way because of this program. The guy who was helping them, the Russian who was helping with this research on cloning and all that, and then modification, gets freaked out by something and decides to go back to Russia. And that's where Henry comes in to kill him. So then we find out they want to kill Henry because they're trying to make these clones of him that are as effective as him, but without any of his weaknesses, without any human weaknesses. And that's something that Varys talks about a couple times. You need something more perfect than Henry. You need somebody with his abilities without his weaknesses. It's pounded in over and over. These are weaknesses. You need to push past your fear. You need to push past pain, doubt, things like that. But then he gets a clone. He gets what he wants. He clones Henry. And then he raises the clone as a son.
Yeah.
The son has a room. He has like some kind of mural painted on the wall. He has RC toys that you see. He has
There's model airplanes and things.
There's all sorts of stuff. There's pictures of him with Clay Virus as a kid, with fishing gear on. He raised him. He tells him he loves him.
Yeah, he explicitly, at a couple points in the movie, talks about being a present father.
Yeah.
Like, you don't find out till almost the very end of the movie that Henry's father takes off. When he was 5 years old, there's a very small scene with his dad that he's in a pool, and he like comes up for air, and his dad's there with his very 70s mustache.
Very 70s sunglasses, too.
And you're 5 now. You should be able to do better than that. And he pushes him back under the water. But then you don't find out till much later that apparently his dad took off after that. His mom beat the crap out of him because he was kind of a jackass kid, and he reminded her of him. So that wasn't a good dynamic for him.
But yeah, the whole idea that you want to eliminate emotion, so you raise this kid as your own and teach him to love, essentially, instead of raising him in a more, sterile environment. But it seems like his goal, I guess, was to genetically remove that. But they never really explain how that's possible. The extra junior 2, doesn't speak. He takes his helmet off as he's dying, but he doesn't say anything. It's very strange.
It is. I think they've tried to do this in other movies. They've tried to do this in video games, where they talk about that, where they talk about emotions being the problem.
Equilibrium. Great movie that's an example of that. The whole thing is they try to remove emotion from society to prevent any more wars or conflicts.
Right, and they do. That is what has happened in that movie, but it doesn't lead you watch that. You see the existence these people live, and you're like, well, that's not living.
Kind of blows.
That's just not dying.
Mm-hmm.
To steal a line from the Croods. So anybody who recognizes that line, that's where that's from. But other things that have talked about this, I'm remembering this as a Batman thing, but he talks about that's what makes us different than them. Me, the capacity to not kill you. That's what makes me me and not you. The fact that I feel is what makes me a better soldier, a better warrior, better at doing whatever this job is. And this is another one of those movies that says, oh, well, the perfect soldier doesn't have emotion, doesn't have fear, doesn't have... And it's nothing that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's even a theme in Skyfall.
Possibly.
Where they're talking...
Skyfall.
Yeah, the whole thing is that, spies in the field are obsolete. You can do everything through remote surveillance, drone strikes, things like that. And Bond is telling him, being in the field, looking a man in the eye, knowing when to pull a trigger is important, and knowing when not to. That's even harder to tell what he's telling Q. That's harder to tell in your pajamas. Because Q tells him he can do more damage in a day from his laptop in his pajamas than Blonde Kid in a year in the field. But yeah, it comes down to that. They don't want it to... The main conflict stems from the idea that Clay Virus wants to remove conscience and emotion from soldiers. And Henry opposes it. It's not totally clear why. I mean, they're trying to kill him, so that's what motivates him to initially take action.
It's not clear why, except for, I'd say, just as you watch it in the beginning, certain things it talks about him wanting to retire. It's not just him losing a step. He talks, I can't look at myself in the mirror.
Yeah, he's haunted by what he's done.
I don't like what I'm seeing when I look at this because he has a conscience. And just something I personally believe, soldiers, when we go to war, we do things, you need a conscience. You need to not just be, all right, well, I know there's bad guys in that building. Yeah, but there's kids in there too. So, you know what? Just chuck the grenade in there anyways. We're going to get the bad guys.
True. The reason he decides to retire in the first place is that he tries to make that shot on the train, and there's a little girl there. And he's aiming for the guy's head, but hits him in the neck. And he's saying just being 6 inches off could mean some innocent person dies.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want to do it anymore. And they're talking about that he's the best, and they don't want to lose him. And they know he's going to get old. He's going to eventually stop. He does retire. So, but they want to remove, like you're saying, that part of a person that says, don't do this because there's a potential for something going wrong and somebody else getting hurt.
But that's exactly what you have to have that.
Yep. So ultimately, it's you need a soldier to have a conscience.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the message.
You could say that's the message. My message from this movie is whatever company they use for CGI, don't use that company.
I would agree.
I mean, the de-aging looked good. I'm not going to say it didn't. That was competently done. I believed that looked like a young Will Smith.
Yeah. The scene in particular that I'm thinking of was the junior clone, the other junior, the one without emotion, without fear and pain, looked, when he's running, like something out of the original Witcher from 2008 or whenever that was. Like, it just did not look good. There were these little bits of CGI thrown in. I think even the scene where they're riding in the van together, because I had to rewind it so I could see, when that van goes by, the way it reflects the light doesn't look right. I don't know what it is. I'm not an expert. I don't do that kind of thing. I do photography as a hobby, so I kind of know what reflections ought to look like.
I didn't catch it right away.
It just looked wrong. It looked way too even.
When you had me rewind it and I watched it, I'm like, okay.
There are just these little things that they use CG for that they didn't need to.
Oh,
we brought you out of it.
Oh, we totally forgot. In case you would like to know, Crossbones is in this movie. I didn't realize it. I mean, the guy who was on that minigun in that mask at the very end.
Oh my God! Yes. Okay.
I don't know, like, where he comes from. He looks not like any of the other guys who are getting out of this.
No, you're right. He's
this
wearing
big
that
assault van thing that they've got, and there's all these troops. They're all armored up, and they all look exactly the same as you would. The SWAT team. Those guys look the same. They're all wearing the same. They have the same gear on, and yet there's this guy.
That's the last. Yeah, that I wanted to talk about that too. That guy looks so out of place. They zoom in and they show this like totally black mask, and then around his eyes, did you notice they were painted black?
Right, like it was super
like
open,
the
but
Michael,
then it was
like the
black.
Michael Keaton Batman.
Yeah,
with the black eye paint around where the actual openings in the mask are. Looked so weird.
They just needed a little white paint on that thing.
So weird.
Got a little Crossbones in that movie.
It looked cool. The way they did the shot in and the white of the eyes pops, but nobody's opening their eyes that wide. Like,
well, unless the director says, "Open your eyes wider."
Yeah, super wide. Like that's what they hired him for,
right?
Yeah, just a lot of little stuff that took away from the believability of it and the realism of it. I mean, even for an outlandish action movie.
Yeah, which I don't mind. I'm okay with some suspension of disbelief, but some of the things they did in this, it wasn't great. I don't want to just say it's not a watch.
I would say it's a watch with some reservations. Be aware the CG is going to look a little bit dated. There are some scenes that are going to pull you out of it, but the overall story of it, the interaction with the characters, particularly, Baron, I really liked.
Yeah, he was great.
I just liked him in general.
Baron was the character played by Benedict Wong.
He was
very fun. Henry and Danny, their interaction, it was one of my favorite interactions by a male and female co-stars in a movie that I've seen in a while. It felt very equal. Mm-hmm. That I didn't feel like one was holding up the other one in any way, shape, or form. That they were both there to, try and uncover whatever was going on around them and survive the situation
and get back to their lives.
Right. That was
they
really
even
well
had
done.
Different goals. Him to retire, her to go back to work.
Yeah, she even said, "Well, when I'm running this place." Mm-hmm. Like, even after they tried to kill her, she's like, "Yeah, once I'm running this place, we're going to change the whole retirement strategy."
Yeah.
Like, there were some really good moments. I liked them a lot. It was almost worth it just for that. That was a very fun part of this movie.
It's also a short movie.
Yeah, it wasn't super long.
An hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30 minutes, something like that.
I think it was around there. No, almost 2.
Almost 2 hours?
Yeah, it was almost 2 hours.
It felt short. It was fast-paced, I guess.
It was. Overall, not the best movie I've ever seen. Certainly not the worst movie we've ever seen.
Yeah, if you're just looking for something random and you're going to take a risk on clicking something, maybe this should be in your list.
Maybe it should. And it's Will Smith. He's charismatic. If you like him, there he does do a good job in this. I don't want to hate on him too much. The young Will Smith, I don't know how much of a fan I was of the way that was played, but
yeah, there's just unusual.
a little.
Even the scene at the very end where he's walking with other people his age, the way they animated him, or however they had him in there, he just looked unreal. Like his proportions looked off.
It did.
It was like Slender Man walking around. I don't know if it was a real person that they chose that was just really tall and really thin, or if it was CG, but it was it was just another one of those moments where it's like, what is that? It's so close to looking like a real person, but it's not quite there.
Yeah, there's something still a little off about it.
Yeah, the uncanny valley.
Well, overall, could have been better, could have been worse.
A resounding meh.
A resounding meh.
All right. You good?
Yeah, I think I'm good, folks. Until next time, hope you enjoyed it. Go watch Gemini Man.
Or don't. You do you.